Well now, gather round, all you fine folk of the night, whether you're drifting through the fog or nestled in close to your wireless. You've just tuned into another shadow-drenched session of Radio Haunt. Tonight, we dance once more with the dreadful and the damned, tales plucked from the edge of reason, the corners of the eye, and the hush between heartbeats. So pour yourself a cup of something warm, bolt that door, and keep a keen ear on the static. Because once the story starts, there's no turning back. The horrors begin. Now, to start off our night, I do want to say that I have collected a list of cryptids throughout the world. Though, of course, with us being a short broadcast, as usual, with our standard time frame of 30 minutes. If we can possibly get to a certain goal of mine, I will increase that 30 minutes to an hour, making our nights a lot longer. But that's just a little bit of news I have to say before we jump right into it. Starting with, well, I last left off last time, since I never got over it. Or I went before, since I never got to read it. My bad. And it is about the Mothman. That was the last story I had from last week's, but never gotten around to it because it passed our scheduled time. And I have a feline friend of mine that's seeming to already want some food, and I could have sworn I just gave her some. Anyways, let's jump right into it. The story is called Wings of the Sky, submitted by an anonymous source. We were at the park for the 4th of July. It's a tradition in our little West Virginia town. Everyone brings folding chairs and coolers. Kids run wild with glow sticks, and the whole town gathers on the hillside by the lake to watch the fireworks show. It's one of the only times of year the town actually gets together. It was packed that night. I was sitting with my wife and our son near the water's edge, maybe 100 feet from the barge? I could be pronouncing that wrong, and I do apologize to those that live in West Virginia. They set fireworks off from there. It was humid, but clear, not a cloud in the sky. The sun had gone down, and the first wave of fireworks was going up. That deep whomp you feel in your chest, followed by the color bursting against the sky. It started right around the 3rd or 4th volley. I noticed people turning away from the fireworks. Not all at once, just little clusters of them pointing up toward the ridge behind the lake. The sky was still flashing with reds and blues, but more and more people weren't looking at the fireworks anymore. They were looking at something else. At first I thought it was part of the show, maybe a drone or a skydiver with a flare. It was a silhouette against the burst of light. Huge! Like a wingspan of a small plane, but it wasn't flying like a bird or a bat. It was gliding. The fireworks kept going, but little by little, they halted. Then it passed right over the lake. And that's when people really saw it. Got a good look at it. The wings were dark, leathery. They extended, unmoving, as the thing hovered above the water, like it was suspended on invisible wire or something of the sorts. But underneath those wings was a body. A tall, thin, almost human-shaped, but twisted and stretched. The head was pointed, almost like a hood or a helmet. But the eyes, big, glowing red eyes, People started screaming. Some ran to their cars, others just froze in place. You could hear kids crying and parents yelling over the fireworks that resumed. But nobody seemed to move fast enough. Like, whatever it was had dampened everything around it. Even the fireworks seemed quieter. The thing made no sound. Not a flap, not a screech. It just hovered there watching us as we ran, tried to run. Then, in one quick motion, it shot upward, straight into the sky, wings folded once, twice, and it disappeared beyond the tree line. The show kept going, but half of the people were already gone before the grand finale. Later, a few of us stayed behind and tried to talk about it. Nobody had footage. Phones either glitched or wouldn't focus. One guy swore his screen cracked the moment he aimed it up at the thing. An older woman said she'd seen it before, back in the 60s, back when she was a girl, right before the Silver Bridge collapsed. Now, my thoughts on that real quick. I have heard that story, and it is a very fascinating story. Maybe one day we can go over it, but it is very fascinating because I love the concept of that it was the Mothman, the sighting of the Mothman that caused it to collapse. She said it looked exactly the same. Said it only comes with something bad's about to happen. That was last summer. Since then, 5 people from our town have gone missing. Not all at once. They were just gone. Following days. Now I know I already had my little bit of 2 cents in there, but the story behind the Mothman being a symbol of bad luck or unfortunate circumstances or upcoming catastrophes is a very interesting, let's say, coincidence. Not coincidence, just fascinating, I guess is the best word I can add, or I can, put. But the story of the Silver Bridge kind of just gave it its, solidified the legend behind it, or the consequences behind it, or whatever you want to call it. It's fascinating. Especially with, I know different cryptids around the world have their own little meanings or consequences or, I guess, accidents or lore behind each and every one of them. And some of them even cause worse luck than this. But this one is one of my more favorites, with it being an old one that I've known for a while. Alright, on to the next one. This is a cryptid from Massachusetts, USA. Now, again, hey, little feline, right? Hush. I don't know why the studio let you in here. Now, those who have lived in Massachusetts and may know your cryptids very well, it is the Dover Demon. Now, I have heard of this but this cryptid. But know very little on it due to just lack of research. I have not looked around. I probably should start doing that so I at least have a little bit more input on these creatures, fine creatures. But let's just jump right into it because this is another anonymous story. Yeah, anonymous story. I'd taken a job out of desperation. After college, I bounced from place to place until I ended up in a tiny Massachusetts town I won't name, partially to protect it, and partly because I don't think anyone who wasn't there would believe what I'm about to tell you. It was a farm gig, just a summer job. The land stretched for acres, corn mostly, long fields of it that buzzed with life during the day and went to bed quiet at night. My job was pretty basic. Inspect the irrigation system, check the crops damage, clear the occasional animal out of the fencing. Boring stuff like usual. Until the night I saw it. It started with the scarecrows. We had 3. One at the Westfield, one at the far edge, and one near the old silo. On Thursday morning, all 3 had been ripped down. Not by wind, not by animals. They were torn down. Their wooden spines snapped clean through, arms missing, bullet faces shredded like they'd been clawed. The boss said it was probably teenagers messing around, but even he didn't sound convinced. That night I stayed behind to keep watch. I was stationed near the edge of the corn, armed with nothing but a flashlight and a thermos of black coffee. Thermos, that's the word I was thinking. By midnight the fog rolled in, a thick, heavy, soaking through my jacket. Even the flashlight barely cut through it. Now, my 2 cents on that is that I have seen fogs like that, and they suck driving through them. Around 12:40 a.m., I heard something moving in the field. I called out. Nothing. Then from the left, I saw movement. Something crawled out of the stalks on all 4s. Pale gray, skinny long fingers dragging through the dirt like they were boneless. Its head was big, way too big for its body, and its eyes were bulbous. These black bulbous things that caught the light but didn't reflect it. It watched me for I don't know how long before it stood up. This frail, spindly thing standing there, head tilted like it didn't understand what I was. I backed away, and it followed. It wasn't walking either. It was what looked to be gliding. Then I ran. Didn't stop until I was in my truck and halfway down the road. Didn't go back to that farm. I quit the next morning and moved 2 towns over. I checked old local papers out of curiosity a few months later. One had a headline from 1977. Strange creature spotted in Dover. Police dismiss sighting. Same description, same thing. Whatever I saw wasn't new to them. It's been there a long time. But I don't plan on ever going back. Now, my thoughts on the Dover demon. There we go. Is that it is very reminiscent of what sounds to be almost like a gray, or I guess what people call aliens. And it kind of reminds me of that old movie that had to do with a farmhouse, cornfield, and some tall, lanky gray aliens, which everybody probably knows this movie. If you haven't seen it, I recommend it heavily. It is called Signs. So I'm not really a big fan of the telly, but I'd say probably go check that movie out. Now on to the next one. This cryptid is from South Carolina, USA. The Lizard Man of Scape Ore Swamp. Now, I haven't heard this one either. I know of lizard men due to just, everybody's some conspiracy theories going around the world and whatnot. But I'm not going to get into that. This is not what this broadcast is about. Yeah, let's keep it like that. Let's not get into that. Not anytime soon, at least. Anyways, on to the story. South Carolina summers are the kind of hot that makes your bones feel sticky. I grew up near Bishopville. Bishopville? I hope I pronounced that right. A place most people pass through without remembering. But if you talk to the old timers, really talk to them, you'll hear stories about scape or swamp. They say something lives there, and I'll believe them because I saw with my own eyes. I was 16, took my dad's old truck out one night, just trying to get away from everything. My girlfriend had broken up with me. I was failing algebra, and I just wanted to be alone. I understand the feeling about the algebra, the girlfriend part not so much. I pulled off the main road and parked near the swamp trail, figuring I'd just walk a little, clear my head. I pulled off the main road. Oh, nope, my bad. Rereading that. The sun was setting and the trees cast these long, spindly shadows across the mud. You ever notice how everything in the swamp feels older than it should? Like time runs differently out there. By the time I realized how far I'd walked, it was already dark. That's when I heard splashing. Not frogs, not gators. It sounded like footsteps. Heavy ones at that. I turned around and saw cattails shaking. Then a hand reached through them. A long, scaly, greenish black webbed claws. I froze. And what came out of the water looked like a man. Sort of. But bigger and taller, almost 7 feet. Its skin glistened like whetstone, and its eyes were this deep, glowing amber. It let out a sound, a half hiss, half growl, and it took a step toward me. Of course, I ran. The mud slowed me down. I could hear it chasing me, fast, crashing through the water like it didn't care what it hit. I tripped, slammed into a tree, scrambled up, and didn't look back. I made it to the truck, locked the doors, and peeled it so fast I nearly flipped it. And later that night, I found deep scratch marks across the truck's hood. 3 perfect lines, like something with talent had tried to hold me in place. I never went back, of course, but sometimes when the humidity's thick and the air smells like decay, sometimes remember that night and hear those sounds, the low, gurgling hiss. I don't have much thoughts on that. Just the fact that the stories of lizardmen and amphibious humanoid figures out in the world is a little too common. Not in the sense of that we have proof of it existing, but just there's so much stories behind them, which I love reading them. I'll still read them if you have any good ones, especially if you've seen something like that yourself. But it's probably not something I want to fully put my attention towards because it doesn't seem like there's a lot of interesting encounters with them, if you know what I mean. Now, on to the next one, and I know I'm going to pronounce this wrong, and I do apologize to those that live in this area. This next cryptid is called Nakalev. Again, I pronounced it totally wrong. I completely understand if you do not like me for it. Orkney Islands, Scotland. Now, I never have heard of this creature. And I haven't read this story through. I haven't even skimmed it. But from just the name alone has caught my attention. And I might look it up to see if there's any more stories. Because, again, I am looking and compiling a list of cryptids from all over the world to see if I can find some interesting Well, there's a lot of interesting ones, and this was one of them. I need to look more into it, but it's a very fascinating creature. I'd gone to Orkneys to forget. I was coming off a hard divorce and needed somewhere remote. A place with wind and silence and old stones. I found a rental college near Cliffside Village. Population maybe 20 people at most. Everyone kept to themselves mostly. There's a pub though, and after a few pints I started to learn things. One night an old man named Fraser Fraser. Okay, I see now. The name is Fraser. Again, pronouncing the name wrong, I will pronounce most of these names or places wrong. He leaned in and asked if I'd walked the beach trail near the Black Rocks yet. I told him no, of course. He nodded once and said, "Whatever you do, don't go when the mist rolls in." I laughed it off, of course, but he did it. He looked serious. 3 days later, I ignored his advice, of course. I was curious. It was dusk. Fog settling over the water, waves crashing in slow, rhythmic patterns. The cliffs above loomed like sleeping giants. I was walking alone, hands in my coat pockets, when I saw something along the rocks. It looked like it moved. It looked like a horse at first. Moved like one at least. But I was wrong. When I got a closer look, I saw that its legs were bent backward. His body was skinless, red and wet like raw meat, like it was skinned alive. You could see every tendon, every muscle twitch, and it stepped forward. Its rider, if you could call it that, was fused to its back. A grotesque man-shaped arms far too long had bent backwards, like it had been snapped and forced to look back behind it forever. And its eyes were white, glowing, and what looked to be focused on me. I ducked behind a boulder, heart pounding. That's when I noticed the air stank. Smelled like sulfur and rot. And then I heard a breath. Wheezing and wet. I don't remember how long I stayed hidden. Maybe 10 minutes? Maybe an hour. When I looked again, the beach was empty. No fog. No smell. No track. But the stone I hid behind was scorched. Like it was burned. Or something burned its shape into the rock. I left the next day. I never ever walked alone in a fog ever again. Especially near the sea. Now that's it for that story. And I have to say, when I found this thing, compiled this with my other cryptids. This thing caught my attention because of that description, and it is one of the grotesque sounding creatures I've heard yet. Well, besides comparing to SCP. But the SCP stuff is totally different. And I plan on finding out more about this thing. I hope to find more cryptids just like this because it is fascinating. Especially with it being a local legend in Scotland. Which maybe I would like to visit one day. But we know how the world is right now. And that is a very low possibility of me actually being able to pull off. But I hope, and if I really do, but if anybody out there has any interesting cryptids of their own, or stories of their own along the lines of the cryptids, I would love to hear them, because I would love to read them. And looks like that's it for that story, and it looks like that's it for the rest. I don't have any other words, or any 2 cents, I guess. And the time is coming closer to its end. And just like that, my dear night owls, the hour grows late, and our stories run dry. For now, at least. You've walked the shadowed roads, peeked behind the curtain, and dared to listen when silence begged otherwise. And I tip my hat to your courage and curiosity. So until next time, keep your lights low, your minds sharp, and remember, some things knock only once. This has been your radio host, signing off. Good night, and beware the shadows.
You want to say goodbye?